The last thing I remember is the color of the sky. A flat, indifferent gray, the kind that promises rain but never delivers. I was crossing Elm Street, lost in thought about a mislabeled manuscript from the 18th century. Mundane. That's the word for my life. I was Leo Maxwell, an archivist. My world was made of quiet dust, brittle paper, and the silent stories of the long dead. I never expected to join them so soon. A screech of tires, a woman's scream, a flash of a blue coat. My body moved before my brain did. A hard shove, a grunt of effort, and then nothing, not pain, not light. Just a sudden, immense silence, as if the world's volume knob had been twisted to zero. My final heroic act was a footnote in a life lived in the margins. I expected heaven, or maybe just a dreamless sleep. I got a waiting room. It was impossibly sterile, furnished with gray chairs that looked like they were designed to be uncomfortable. The air was still, thick, and smelled of nothing at all. There were no magazines, no windows, no sound. It felt like the DMV of the afterlife. I sat for what felt like an hour or maybe a decade. Time didn't seem to stick here. Finally, a door I hadn't noticed before opened, and a figure stepped out. It wasn't a person, not really. It wore the shape of a man in a tailored suit, but its face was a smooth, featureless expanse of porcelain white, and it moved without a sound. It didn't walk. It glided. Leo Maxwell, it stated. It wasn't a question. Its voice was like the rustle of old paper, dry and devoid of emotion. "Where am I?" I asked, my own voice sounding small and fragile. "You are in transition," the figure said. "A processing center. Your departure was unexpected. Your soul is currently unclaimed." Unclaimed? So what happens now? Do I get a number? The featureless face seemed to tilt, a gesture that might have been curiosity. "Your file indicates a high degree of empathetic resonance. You spent your life preserving the stories of others. This makes you a candidate. A candidate for what? A reassignment." The figure glided behind a stark metal desk that hadn't been there a moment ago. "The universe requires balance. Not everything moves on. Some things linger, objects imbued with the final, powerful emotions of their owners. Grief, rage, love, regret. We call them relics. They are dangerous. They bleed their emotions into the world, causing echoes of chaos." It paused, letting the words settle in the silent room. "We contain them in a place known as the collection. But they require management. They require understanding. They require keepers," I stared, trying to process. "You're offering me a job?" "It is an alternative to dissolution," the figure explained calmly. "Your soul has no strong tether to the next plane. If you decline, you will simply cease, fade into the static from which all things are born and to which all unclaimed things return. A choice between being a supernatural janitor and being deleted from existence. Great options. So I'd be an archivist for haunted objects?" The corner of my mouth twitched into a sad, ironic smile. It seemed my one skill was transferable across the veil. "You would be a keeper," the figure corrected. "You would contain their influence, understand their stories, and archive their pain until they can fade peacefully. It is a quiet, solitary, and eternal service." Eternal. The word echoed in the stillness. I thought about my life. The quiet apartment, the dusty books, the feeling that I was already a ghost haunting the edges of other people's vibrant stories. Maybe this wasn't so different. "What do you call yourself?" I asked. "I am the auditor. I ensure the rules are followed. And if I accept?" The auditor extended a smooth porcelain hand. "Then your service begins now." I looked at its hand, then around the featureless room. Dissolution sounded peaceful in a way, an end to everything. But the archivist in me, the part that couldn't bear to see a story left unfinished, stirred. These relics, they were like my manuscripts. They had a history. They deserved to be understood, not just locked away. I took a breath that felt like my first and last. "Okay," I said, reaching out to shake its hand. "I accept." The moment my fingers touched its cold, smooth surface, the gray room dissolved into an endless library of shelves, each holding not a book, but a single, lonely object bathed in a soft, sorrowful light. My reassignment had begun. The collection was overwhelming. It was a library of things, stretching into an impossible distance under a soft, twilight glow. Each shelf held an object in a simple glass case, A child's worn sneaker, a tarnished silver spoon, a faded baseball cap, a single pristine feather. There were millions of them, each one humming with a silent, contained energy. It was the quietest, saddest place I had ever been. "Your station is here," the auditor's voice echoed, though it was standing right beside me. It gestured to a small, isolated workspace. A simple wooden table, a comfortable chair, and a set of white cotton gloves. "Your first assignment is ready." On the table sat a single, unassuming object, a man's leather wallet. It was old, softened with age, the corners frayed. A dark stain, almost black, marred one side. I could feel a faint, pulsing sorrow emanating from it, like heat off summer asphalt. "The subject is a wallet, recovered from a train crash in 1982, the auditor explained. "Its emotional bleed is primarily regret, with undertones of unresolved love. It is a Class 1 relic, minimal risk. Minimal risk? What's a high-risk relic?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "An object of pure rage. A knife that remembers its purpose. A mirror that reflects only hatred. You are not ready for those. For now you will learn to contain. Put on the gloves." I slid my hands into the soft cotton. They felt like the ones I used to wear when handling fragile manuscripts. The familiarity was a small comfort. "Your task is to neutralize its emotional energy," the auditor continued. "To do this, you must understand its story. Touch the relic, open yourself to its resonance, and archive its final memory. Once the story is understood, the emotion will be contained. And what happens if I can't? The bleed will intensify. It could overwhelm you, trapping you in its emotional loop. Do not fail." With that cheerful thought, the auditor glided away, leaving me alone with the wallet. I took a deep breath and sat down. The silence of the collection pressed in, amplifying the soft, sad hum of the object before me. I reached out, my gloved fingers hesitating for a moment before making contact. The moment I touched it, the world dissolved. I wasn't in the collection anymore. I was on a train, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks beneath me. The smell of cheap coffee and cigarette smoke filled the air. My hands, no, his hands, were trembling as they clutched the wallet. I could feel the worn leather, the lump of folded cash, the smooth edge of a photograph tucked inside. I was him. His name was Arthur. He was 42 years old, a salesman on his way home from a trip he didn't want to take. His heart ached with a heavy, familiar guilt. He was thinking about his wife, Eleanor. They had argued before he left, a stupid fight about money. His last words to her had been angry, and now, miles from home, the regret was a physical weight in his chest. He pulled the wallet open. Inside was a faded photo of Eleanor, smiling on their wedding day. He traced her face with his thumb, a silent apology forming on his lips. He was going to buy her flowers, the expensive kind she loved but always said were a waste of money. He was going to tell her he was sorry, that she was all that mattered, then a sudden violent lurch. The coffee cup on the tray beside him flew into the air. A scream from the next car. The screech of metal on metal was deafening. The world tilted, windows shattered, and a blinding white light filled my vision. In that final, terrifying second, Arthur's only thought was of Eleanor. The love, the regret, the apology he would never get to make, it all surged through me, a tidal wave of pure, undiluted emotion. I gasped, pulling my hand back from the wallet as if it were burning. I was back at the table, my heart pounding, tears streaming down my face. I could still feel Arthur's love for Eleanor, his crushing regret as if it were my own. It was the most profound sadness I had ever experienced. I looked at the wallet. The sorrowful hum was gone. It was just an object now, quiet and still. On a small, ethereal plaque that appeared beside it, words began to form. Relic, leather wallet owner, Arthur Penhaligon. Final emotion, regret and unresolved love, status contained, archived. I had done it. I had archived his pain. I leaned back in my chair, emotionally drained, my hands still shaking. This wasn't just a job. It wasn't about filing things away. It was about bearing witness to the final broken moments of a life. And in this quiet, endless library of sorrows, I was the only one left to read the stories. "You're the new guy, huh?" The voice startled me. It was the first human-sounding thing I'd heard since I arrived, aside from my own. I looked up from the tarnished silver locket I was currently archiving. A woman stood leaning against a nearby shelf, arms crossed. She had sharp, tired eyes and a wry, almost bitter smile. "I guess so," I said. "Leo. Anya," she replied, not offering a hand. "Don't get too comfortable. The new ones either burn out or get erased." I blinked. "Erased?" "That's what the auditor calls it when a keeper messes up so badly they just disappear. Fun, right?" She pushed herself off the shelf and walked closer, her steps echoing in the vast silence. "So what did you get? Regret? Unrequited love? The usual starter pack of sadness?" It was a wallet. A man who died in a train crash. The memory of Arthur's final moments still felt raw. "Ah, a classic. Easy on the soul," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Wait until you get your first rage-fueled murder weapon. You'll be sleeping with the lights on for a decade, assuming we slept, or had lights." It was a strange comfort talking to someone, even someone this cynical. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Long enough to forget what the sun feels like," Anya said, her gaze drifting over the endless shelves. "I was a journalist. Chased stories. Now I'm the last one to read them. Poetic, I guess. Do you ever get used to it?" I asked, gesturing to the locket. "Feeling what they felt?" She snorted. "You don't get used to it. You just build taller walls. You have to, Leo. If you let every sad story break your heart, you'll have nothing left for yourself. And trust me, you need what's left." The auditor glided into view then, its featureless face turning from me to her. "Keeper Anya, you are away from your station." "Taking my 5, she said dryly. "Or the eternal equivalent." The auditor ignored her sarcasm. "Keeper Leo is processing a Class 2 relic. He requires focus." "I'm just giving him the welcome speech the collection doesn't provide," Anya shot back. "The one that says don't get attached, don't get curious. And for the love of whatever you believe in, don't break the rules." "The rules are in place for the stability of this realm," the auditor stated. "Right. Stability." Anya's eyes met mine, and there was a flicker of something serious beneath the cynicism. "Listen to me, Leo. There are a lot of rules here, but only one truly matters. The one that will get you erased." I waited. "Never, ever engage with a relic that feels familiar," she said, her voice dropping to a low, urgent whisper. "If you feel a pull, a flicker of a memory that feels like yours, you walk away. You report it, and you let it go. Do you understand?" "Why?" I asked. "What happens?" "They call it an echo," she said, glancing nervously toward the auditor. "When your own emotional resonance connects with a relic from your timeline, it creates a feedback loop. The memory doesn't just play in your head. It bleeds out. It can rewrite parts of the collection. It can unmake things." "It unmakes you. Has it happened before?" Anya's face darkened. "There was a keeper before me. A guy named Ben. He found his own father's pocket watch. He thought he could handle it. Thought he could just say goodbye, and I never saw him again," she said flatly. "His station is still empty, 3 aisles down." "A warning." The auditor made a soft rustling sound, a sign of impatience. "Your break is over, Keeper Anya." Anya rolled her eyes but pushed herself away. "Just remember what I said, Leo. This place isn't about saving souls. It's about filing them away. Don't be a hero." She walked off, disappearing into the twilight of the shelves. I was left alone again, the silver locket on my table seeming to hum with a new, more sinister energy. Never touch a relic that feels familiar. The rule seemed simple enough. My life had been small, my connections few. What were the chances I'd find anything from my own quiet existence in this endless archive of human tragedy? I reached for the locket, preparing myself for another stranger's story. But as my fingers brushed against the cool metal, a thought, cold and sharp, cut through me. My life had been quiet, yes, but it hadn't been without its own stories, its own secrets. And in a place where every object held a memory, I suddenly felt a new kind of fear. What if one of those memories was mine? "New acquisition for you, Keeper," the auditor's voice announced, its tone as flat as ever. "Class 3. Handle with standard protocol." I looked up from the child's worn teddy bear I was archiving, a particularly brutal one filled with the terror of a house fire. My own emotional walls, as Anya called them, felt thin today. "What is it?" A silver locket, recovered from a sealed apartment. The previous occupant was deceased for approximately 1 year before discovery. A new containment unit, a sleek, lead-lined box, glided to my station and settled onto the table. It hummed with a low, contained energy. But there was something else, too. A sharper, more piercing frequency that seemed to cut through the general sorrow of the collection. "Why is it a Class 3? I asked, pulling on a fresh pair of gloves. "Is it rage?" "No," the auditor replied. "Its emotional signature is a complex fusion of fear and betrayal. It is unstable. Do not linger in the memory." I nodded, my focus already on the box. As I reached for the latch, a strange sensation washed over me, a sharp, painful jolt that felt like a forgotten memory trying to surface. It was a feeling of home, a warmth I hadn't felt since my own death. My hand froze just above the lid. "What's wrong, Keeper?" The auditor's voice was suddenly closer. "I don't know," I said, my heart starting to pound. I just felt something, defined something. It felt familiar. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and dangerous. I immediately thought of Anya's warning. Never engage with a relic that feels familiar. The auditor was silent for a long moment. "Step away from the object, Keeper Leo." "But I haven't even touched it yet," I argued, though my instincts were screaming at me to obey. The pull from the box was getting stronger, a magnetic force tugging not at my body, but at my soul. It was a feeling of love, of summer nights, of a name I couldn't quite remember but knew I once cherished. "Your resonance is already reacting to its proximity," the auditor stated. "This relic is from your timeline. It is forbidden. I will reassign it." "No," I heard myself say, the word coming out before I could stop it. "Let me see it." "You are invoking Rule 7. 3. A keeper is forbidden from processing any object from their own temporal or emotional sphere. The risk of an echo is absolute." "I just want to see it," I insisted, my curiosity now a burning obsession. "Who did it belong to?" "The name is irrelevant." "It's not irrelevant to me." My voice was louder than I intended, a jarring sound in the sacred quiet of the collection. "If it's connected to me, I have a right to know." The auditor tilted its featureless head. "You have a duty, Keeper, not rights. Your personal history was archived upon your reassignment. It no longer exists." But it did exist. I could feel it, pulsing from inside that box. A story that was somehow, inexplicably, mine. I thought of Anya's warning about Ben, the keeper who was erased. Fear warred with a desperate, all-consuming need to know. "Just open the box," I pleaded, my voice softer now. "Please, I won't touch it. I just need to see." The auditor remained still for what felt like an eternity. "Your persistence is a dangerous anomaly, Keeper." "My life was an anomaly," I shot back. "I was an archivist. My job was to uncover stories, not bury them. How can I do my duty here if I'm not allowed to understand the most important story of all, my own?" The box on the table seemed to hum in agreement. I could almost hear a whisper coming from it, a woman's voice calling a name that was almost mine. "Very well," the auditor said, a chilling finality in its tone. "You may observe the object, but I warn you, Leo Maxwell. If you break protocol, the consequences will be your own undoing. The collection does not tolerate instability." With a faint metallic click, the latch on the lead-lined box sprang open. I leaned forward, my breath caught in my chest, and peered inside. There, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a simple silver locket, tarnished with age. It was heart-shaped with a small familiar engraving of a willow tree on its surface, and I knew, with a certainty that defied logic and reason, that I had held this locket before. "You look like hell," Anya said, appearing at my station like a ghost. "Did you sleep last night?" "Oh, wait. I didn't look up from the 19th century pocket watch I was supposed to be archiving." Its owner had died of a broken heart, a slow and agonizing process. I could feel the dull ache behind my ribs, but it wasn't his. It was mine. I'm fine. No, you're not, she said, her voice dropping. I saw them take the locket away. The auditor was practically vibrating with disapproval. You felt the pull, didn't you? I finally met her gaze. It was more than a pull, Anya. It was a memory. I know that, Locket, she sighed, a long, weary sound. Then you need to let it go, Leo. Forgetting is a survival skill in this place. The most important one. I was an archivist, I said, my voice tight. My entire life was about not letting things be forgotten. I can't just turn that off. You'd better learn, she warned, or the collection will turn it off for you. Permanently. She drifted away, leaving me with her warning hanging in the air. But she was too late. The archivist in me was already awake, and he was hungry for answers. For the next few cycles, days, I guess, I did my job. I archived a child's crayon drawing, a soldier's last letter, a faded concert ticket. I felt their joy, their fear, their love. But with each story I processed, the need to know the one in the locket grew stronger. It felt like a missing page from my own life's manuscript. I knew I couldn't ask the auditor. That was a dead end. But the collection, like any library, had to have a catalog, a record system. And if there was a system, it could be navigated. I started exploring during the low resonance periods, the quiet times when most of the active processing was done. I ventured deeper into the archives than I ever had before, past shelves of humming, whispering objects. I was looking for the central index, the heart of the library. What are you doing? Anya's voice cut through the silence. I found her sitting on a stack of containment units in a dimly lit aisle, watching me. I'm looking for the archives, I said, not bothering to lie. You're looking for trouble, she corrected. The records are off limits to keepers. Only the auditor has access. There has to be a terminal. A way to look up a Relic's acquisition file. She studied me for a long moment, her tired eyes searching my face. Why are you so obsessed with this one object, Leo? You've processed dozens of tragedies. What makes this one so special? Because it doesn't feel like a tragedy, I said. It feels like a loose thread. In my own story. Anya sighed again, but this time it sounded different. Less cynical. There's a reason the records are restricted. Some stories are connected. You pull one thread, you might unravel a dozen others. The auditor values order above all else. Messy narratives are a threat. Then I'll be neat, I promised. She stared at me, a silent debate happening behind her eyes. Finally, she gave a slight nod. Aisle 94, Section Gamma. There's a maintenance terminal behind a loose panel. It's old, slow, and probably logs everything. But it's your only shot. Why are you helping me? I asked, surprised. Because I'm tired of the silence, she said, her voice barely a whisper. And maybe I'm tired of being a good little ghost. Don't get caught, Leo. I found the terminal exactly where she said it would be. It was an archaic piece of equipment, humming with a low, ancient power. I bypassed the initial security with surprising ease. It seemed the auditor was more concerned with physical containment than digital. I typed in what little I knew. Locket, silver, willow tree. The system churned for a moment, and then a file appeared. Relic ID. 77B Locket acquisition date. 1 year before my own death. Owner, Clara Holloway. Cause of departure, accidental fall. Final emotion, fear, betrayal, Clara Holloway. The name echoed in my mind, unlocking a memory I didn't know I had. Clara, my neighbor. The quiet artist who lived in the apartment next to mine. The one I used to share coffee with on Sunday mornings. The one who had vanished without a word, her apartment sealed off. They said she'd moved away, accidental fall. But the relic's emotion was fear and betrayal. The two didn't match. My fingers flew across the keyboard, digging deeper. I cross-referenced her address, the date of her accident, and then I found it. A linked file. A note from the auditor, logged on the day of my own death. Resonance anomaly detected. Keeper Leo Maxwell's departure shows a high probability of timeline intersection with Relic 77B Locket. Investigation pending. For containment purposes, both files are to be sealed under Protocol Echo. My blood ran cold. My death, her death. They were connected, The auditor knew. It had known from the moment I arrived. This wasn't just a rule I was breaking. It was a conspiracy I was uncovering. And I was at the center of it. "You're going to do it, aren't you?" Anya's voice was a low whisper in the twilight of the archives. "You're going to touch it." I didn't turn around. My eyes were fixed on the high-security containment sector, a vault-like area where the most volatile relics were kept. The locket was in there. I could feel its pull, a siren song of unfinished stories. "I have to, Anya. It's not just about her anymore. It's about me." "It's about getting yourself erased," she shot back, her footsteps silent as she came up behind me. "Leo, I told you what happened to Ben. The auditor doesn't give second chances." "The auditor is hiding something," I said, my voice tight with a conviction I didn't know I had. "My death and Clara's are connected. There's a protocol in place to keep them separate. To keep me from finding out. Why?" Anya was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. "What if the truth is worse than not knowing? What if knowing is what breaks you?" "I was an archivist," I reminded her, finally turning to face her. "My job was to put the pieces together, no matter how sharp they were. I can handle it." She studied my face, a sad, knowing look in her eyes. "Famous last words," she murmured. "The system reboots for maintenance in 10 minutes. The internal sensors will be down for exactly 90 seconds. That's your window. Don't be in there when they come back online. You're not going to stop me?" "I told you," she said with a wry, tired smile. "I'm tired of the silence. Just try not to get unmade, okay? This place is boring enough already." I waited, my heart, or whatever passed for it now, pounding in my chest. When the overhead twilight glow of the collection dimmed for a moment, the signal for the reboot, I moved. The door to the high-security sector was heavy, sealed with a resonance lock. But I had spent the last cycle studying the schematics I'd found on the terminal. I placed my hand on the panel, focused my own empathetic energy, and mimicked the frequency of a neutral, Class 1 relic. The lock clicked open. Inside, the air was cold, humming with the contained power of hundreds of dangerous objects. I found the locket easily. It was in a reinforced glass case, its gentle, sorrowful light a stark contrast to the angry, pulsing reds of the murder weapons and artifacts of betrayal surrounding it. 90 seconds. I slid open the case. The moment the locket was exposed to the open air, the whispers started, faint, desperate, a chorus of fear. My hand trembled as I reached for it. "Never engage with a relic that feels familiar." Anya's voice echoed in my head. I ignored it. My fingers closed around the cool, smooth metal, and the world shattered. It wasn't a memory. It was an explosion. The collection around me warped, the shelves twisting into impossible shapes. The whispers of 100 other relics screamed in unison. An echo. It was happening. But I was inside the Locket story now. I was with Clara. We were in her apartment, the one next to mine. It was late. She was arguing with a man, his face obscured by shadows, his voice a low, menacing growl. "You can't tell anyone, Clara, you promised." "I can't keep living like this," she cried, clutching the locket to her chest. "It was supposed to be a partnership, not a prison. The museum's funds, people are going to find out. The museum. My museum." The man stepped forward into a sliver of moonlight from the window. My blood ran cold. It was Mr. Alistair Finch, a wealthy philanthropist, the museum's biggest benefactor, a man I had shaken hands with a dozen times. "You won't say a word," he snarled, his charming public persona gone, replaced by something cold and reptilian. He lunged for her. She screamed. The world spun, a flash of violence, a sickening crack, and then darkness. The echo in the collection intensified. A wave of raw emotional energy blasted through the room. The glass cases of other relics began to crack. Alarms, silent for centuries, began to blare. I pulled my hand back, gasping, the vision fading. I was back in the vault, the locket still in my palm. She was murdered. Finch killed her to cover up his embezzlement. Suddenly, the auditor was there, standing in the doorway, its featureless face turned toward the chaos. "You have broken the primary rule, Keeper Leo. You have destabilized this realm." "He killed her," I choked out, holding up the locket. Alistair Finch, and you knew. You sealed the files. Order must be maintained, the auditor stated, its voice colder than I'd ever heard it. Your existence is now a threat to that order. It raised its hand, and the very fabric of the space around me began to unravel. I was being erased. Stop! I yelled, my voice straining against the sound of reality tearing apart. You can't erase me, not yet. You know why. The auditor paused, its hand still raised. The unraveling sensation slowed, though the alarm still blared and the screams of 1,000 relics echoed around us. Your purpose is fulfilled, Keeper. You have become an anomaly. Anomalies are corrected. I'm not an anomaly, I'm a witness. I shot back, taking a step forward, the locket held out like a shield. You didn't seal this file just to maintain order. You sealed it because my death is part of the same story, isn't it? The auditor's featureless face remained impassive, but I felt a flicker in its energy, a subtle shift from absolute authority to something else. Hesitation. You knew Finch was a murderer, I pressed on, my archivist instincts taking over, piecing together the narrative. Clara was going to expose him for embezzling museum funds. He killed her to silence her. But you're not law enforcement. You just collect the aftermath. The story ends there, right? The collection's mandate is to contain emotional resonance, not to interfere with the corporeal plane, the auditor stated, its voice flat. But something went wrong, I continued, the pieces clicking into place with a terrifying certainty. My death wasn't an accident, was it? That car crash. It wasn't random. Anya appeared in the doorway then, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. Leo, what have you done? He's done what no keeper is meant to do, the auditor said. He has connected the archives. Tell me the truth. I demanded, my voice raw. Alistair Finch, was he involved in my death? The auditor was silent. He was, wasn't he? I pushed, the horrible realization dawning. Clara must have hidden evidence before he killed her. Something he couldn't find. Maybe in her apartment? He knew I was her neighbor, her friend. He must have thought she told me something, or that I had found whatever she hid. The memories flooded back. Strange encounters in the weeks after Clara's disappearance. Finch at the museum asking casual questions about her, about our friendship. A break-in at my apartment that I had dismissed as a simple robbery. They hadn't taken anything of value. They were looking for something. The car crash. I whispered, my legs feeling weak. He arranged it. To silence a loose end. To silence me. Your empathetic resonance was unusually high upon arrival, the auditor finally said. It was flagged as a potential paradox. A soul whose story was directly linked to a relic already in containment. To prevent an echo, Protocol 7.3 was enacted. The files were sealed. Your memories were suppressed. You didn't just suppress them, you buried them, I accused, my anger overriding my fear. You let me work here, archiving the pain of strangers, while the truth of my own murder was locked away in your archives. You used me as a file clerk for my own cold case. It was necessary for stability, the auditor repeated, but its voice lacked its usual conviction. Anya stepped forward. So what now? Are you going to erase the only person who knows what really happened? The only one who can connect the dots? His continued existence threatens the integrity of this realm, the auditor insisted. No, Anya argued, her voice surprisingly strong. His existence threatens your sense of order. There's a difference. For centuries, this place has been a passive library of the dead. But what if it's not supposed to be? What if it's supposed to be a place of justice? The alarms began to quiet down. The screaming of the relics softened to a low, sorrowful hum. It was as if they were listening. I can prove it, I said, my mind racing. There must be other relics. Objects connected to Finch. His greed, his crimes. Let me see them. Let me connect the stories. If I'm wrong, then erase me. But if I'm right, I let the sentence hang in the air. The choice was the auditor's. It could maintain its sterile, ordered silence by erasing the truth. Or it could risk everything on the possibility that the collection was meant for something more. The auditor stood motionless for a long time, the master of a silent, eternal library, now faced with a story that refused to be archived. Show me, it finally said, its voice barely a whisper. The living rarely leave a strong enough emotional imprint for a relic to form, the auditor stated as it led us to a forbidden wing of the collection. Their stories are not yet finished. But a man like Alistair Finch, his actions are so steeped in greed and betrayal, he leaves fragments in his wake. The section was different from the rest of the archives. It was colder, darker, and the objects on the shelves were not in glass cases. They were contained in shimmering fields of energy, pulsing with a volatile, unstable light. "These are proto-relics," Anya whispered, her eyes wide. "Objects still tied to their living owners. Touching them is dangerous. Why?" I asked. "Because their story isn't a memory," she explained. "It's a live feed. You don't just see what happened. You can see what's happening now, or even what's about to happen." My blood ran cold. "You can see the future?" "Not the future," the auditor corrected. "You see the emotional trajectory, the path of intent. It is not a certainty, but a warning." It stopped before a containment field that pulsed with a slick, oily black energy. Inside was a pair of gold cufflinks, each one shaped like a serpent eating its own tail. "Alistair Finch's," the auditor said. "Gifted to him by the museum board the year he began his embezzlement." "They hum with arrogance," Anya muttered, keeping her distance. "I have to touch them," I said, my resolve hardening. "It's the only way to know the whole story." "Be careful, Leo," Anya warned. "You won't just be seeing his past. You'll be in his head. Now." I took a deep breath and reached my hand through the shimmering energy field. The moment my fingers brushed the cold metal of the cufflinks, the world dissolved not into a memory, but into a sharp, vivid present. I was in Finch's office. A lavish top-floor suite overlooking the city. I could feel his satisfaction, his smug sense of superiority. He was on the phone, his voice a smooth, confident purr. But beneath it, I could feel the cold reptilian core of his intent. "The arrangements are made," he was saying. "It will look like another unfortunate accident. She's become a liability. Her questions about the acquisition fund are getting too precise." My heart pounded. He was talking about someone else. Another person who was getting too close to the truth. "Who is he talking about?" I whispered, my voice sounding distant, as if it were coming from another room. "Focus, Leo." Anya's voice cut through the vision. "See her face." I pushed deeper into his thoughts, past the layers of greed and narcissism. And then I saw her, a young woman with determined eyes and a stack of accounting files. It was Sarah Jensen, the museum's new junior curator, a bright, ambitious woman I had trained myself just before my death. And then I saw the plan. Finch had arranged for a piece of heavy equipment to malfunction during the installation of a new exhibit. Sarah would be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was clean, untraceable, and scheduled for tomorrow. But there was more. I saw why he had targeted me. Clara had left a coded ledger detailing his crimes, but he didn't know where it was. He thought she had given it to me. My accidental death was to silence a witness I never even knew I was. And then, a final, chilling piece of the puzzle fell into place. I saw the person I had pushed out of the way of that speeding car. The stranger in the blue coat. It was Sarah. Finch's plan to kill me had failed the first time because I had saved her. He must have seen it, realized she was the real target all along, and had been waiting for the right moment to try again. My heroic death hadn't been a random act of kindness. It had been an act of fate, an intervention in a crime that was already in motion. I pulled my hand back, gasping, the vision shattering. I was back in the collection, the cufflink still pulsing with dark energy. "He's going to kill her," I said, my voice shaking. "Tomorrow. He thinks she has the ledger. Anya, is it possible?" I asked, turning to her. "Can we do something?" "We're dead, Leo," she said, her voice heavy with a sad finality. "Our job is to archive, not to interfere." "Then what was the point of this?" I demanded, gesturing to the cufflinks, to the locket, to the endless shelves of stories. "What's the point of knowing the truth if you can't do anything with it?" The auditor was silent, its featureless face unreadable. But for the first time, I felt something emanating from it. Not judgment, not authority. It felt like a question. The same question I was asking. What was the point of this strange, sad eternity if we couldn't make it matter? "No," I said, my voice echoing in the cold, silent wing. "I won't let it happen." Anya looked at me, her expression a mixture of pity and admiration. Leo, there's nothing we can do. We are observers. That is the fundamental rule. Rules can be broken, I shot back, turning to face the auditor. You broke one by letting me access these files. You let me see the truth. Now you have to let me use it. The auditor remained still, a statue carved from silence and eternity. Interference is a paradox. It creates unpredictable ripples. It threatens the stability of all timelines. And letting a murderer walk free doesn't? I challenged. Letting an innocent person die when you have the power to stop it? That maintains stability? Or does it just maintain your precious sterile order at the cost of justice? The air grew heavy. The proto-relics around us seemed to dim as if holding their breath. What do you propose, Keeper? The auditor finally asked, its voice a low rustle of dry leaves. Let me intervene, I said, my mind racing. I can't go back myself. But the energy in this place, the emotional resonance, we can send a message, a warning. We can create an echo on purpose, Anya gasped. Leo, that's insane. A controlled echo has never been done. The feedback could tear this place apart. It could erase you in a second. I know, I said, my gaze locked on the auditor. But Sarah Jensen is alive. She has a story that hasn't been written yet. Mine is already finished. If my fading means she gets to live hers, it's a price I'm willing to pay. I was no longer the quiet archivist who lived in the margins. I was a keeper of stories, and this was one story I refused to let end in tragedy. You would sacrifice your existence for a single living soul? The auditor asked. It was the first time I had ever sensed something akin to curiosity from it. I already did it once, I replied, thinking of the moment I pushed Sarah away from that car. It seems my purpose hasn't changed much, even in death. I laid out my plan. We could use the combined emotional energy of Clara's locket and Finch's cufflinks. The locket held the memory of his crime, the cufflinks his current intent. Fusing them could create a targeted psychic disturbance, a powerful vision, a warning that would appear in Sarah's mind, showing her the danger, showing her Finch's face. It was a desperate, impossible plan. The paradox is too great, the auditor stated. The energy required would consume the originating keeper. I know the cost, I said again, my voice steady. I'm offering a trade. My continued existence in exchange for her life. Let me do this one thing. Let me finish the story I started the day I died. In return, I will accept my erasure. No fight, no resistance. I'll just be archived. Anya looked from me to the auditor, her cynical mask completely gone, replaced by a look of profound respect. It's a keeper's choice, she said softly. To bear witness or to act. Maybe that's the choice we're all meant to make eventually. The auditor stood in silence for a long, heavy moment. The fate of a living woman, a dead archivist, and the very rules of this strange afterlife hung in the balance. I felt the gentle hum of a million lonely objects around me, a silent chorus waiting for a decision. The collection's primary function is containment, the auditor said, its voice resonating with an ancient authority. But its purpose has never been fully defined. It turned its smooth, featureless face to me. Your proposal is accepted, Keeper Leo Maxwell. Prepare the relics. We stood before a simple, unadorned altar in the heart of the collection. On it lay Clara's locket and Finch's cufflinks, humming in disharmony. The air crackled with contained energy. This was it. My final act, are you ready? Anya asked, her voice soft. She stood a respectful distance away, a silent witness. I am, I said, a strange sense of peace settling over me. I had spent my life cataloging the stories of others. Now I would become one. I looked at the auditor. Thank you for letting me do this. The choice was yours, Keeper, it replied. The consequences will follow. I placed my hands over the two relics. I didn't need to touch them this time. I was the bridge between them. I closed my eyes and focused, pulling on the memory of Clara's fear, her betrayal. I fused it with the cold, arrogant intent radiating from the cufflinks. I thought of Sarah, of her bright, determined eyes, and I poured all of my own lingering essence into the message. See him, know him, run. A blinding white light erupted from the altar. I felt a tremendous wrenching force, as if my very soul was being pulled apart and woven into a single powerful beam of energy. It was agony, but it was also purpose. I felt my message cross the veil, a psychic scream that would find its target. I saw a fleeting image of Sarah in the museum, her eyes widening in terror and recognition as she looked at Finch, just before she stepped away from the accident he had planned. She was safe. The story was changed. The light faded. I collapsed to my knees, feeling myself dissolving, becoming transparent. The static was coming. "My time was up. It is done," the auditor's voice echoed. "The paradox has been resolved. The timeline is secure." "Goodbye, Leo," Anya whispered, a single ethereal tear tracing a path down her cheek. I closed my eyes, ready for the end. But it didn't come. The static receded. The feeling of erasure stopped. I opened my eyes. I was still there, whole. "I don't understand," I said, looking at my hands. The deal was that you would accept your erasure," the auditor stated. "And you did." "That was the final test." I stared at it, confused. "This place is not a prison, Leo Maxwell. It is a crucible," it explained, its voice holding a new, almost warm resonance. "It is a place for souls like yours, those who value truth, who feel the weight of unfinished stories, to find their true purpose. You were never meant to be just a file clerk for the dead." It gestured to a new door that was forming in the wall of the archive, a door that glowed with a soft, golden light. "Your reassignment was a recruitment," the auditor continued. "You have proven that you understand the difference between order and justice. Your work is not over. It is just beginning." "What work?" I asked, my voice filled with awe. "There are other stories that need a keeper, other crimes that have crossed the veil, other souls who need a witness. Your new station awaits, investigator." I looked at Anya. She was smiling, a genuine, brilliant smile that transformed her tired face. "Looks like you got a promotion, archivist," she said. I stood up, my heart filled not with the sorrow of 1,000 endings, but with the hope of 100 new beginnings. I was no longer a ghost haunting a library of sadness. I was a guardian of stories, a detective of the departed. My reassignment was never a punishment. It was a calling, and I was finally ready to answer.